because some of you it will be your first sonic transmission, some might have come to sessions before, to give you a sense of what the next kind of 2.5 hours is going to be. Like Adem said, it is not a gig. It's a listening session, and it's our way of creating a space where we can bring people physically into a room together, and also on these occasions have people watching in from their live streams at home, where we can collectively listen to an artist perform live on a good sound system and as like live music. But also there's going to be conversation throughout the session with Shabaka, and that we want to bring you guys into as well at various points. And these will be questions or kind of conversation about what you're hearing, what you're experiencing, but also for artists to be able to talk kind of more broadly about their processes, about their influences, the politics, the narratives that they're telling through their music. So Shabaka, this is a special one because Shabaka is actually, and I had to remind him of this today, is part of the origin story of sonic transmissions. So that when we met in kind of 2015, 2016 time, and we had a conversation about not having enough spaces where therefore the kind of purpose of listening, and how when we go to gigs, it's often like a kind of more passive experience as an audience, and you don't necessarily get to understand a whole practice. And you were like, one day we'll have a session where you do live performance, you're recording it, you press it on a vinyl, you sell the vinyl there, like all of that stuff, and we'll get there one day. But these have been the sessions that we've done because of those conversations. So thanks for being part of the origin story. And then since that conversation, we had a session in 2017 at Total Refreshment Centre together. And then we did another session in 2018. And this is the third session we'll be doing. And that's also part of why we wanted to run Sonic Transmissions, was so that you could be part of an artist's, not just career, but their kind of whole like journey over years, and not just a kind of one-off moment. And so some people here might have been to other sessions that we've done together. So it's this session is not so much about your origin story as an artist, although I'm sure some of that will come into it, but it's also about where you're at now. And that's why I think this is a particularly kind of different session to what we've done with other artists and with you before, because it's really about this like current moment of you as a musician and you as an artist. So yeah, so that's what you'll be hearing. It'll be a bit of chat, bit of music, some recorded, curated tunes that you've picked as well. Does that all make sense and sound all right? No one's ever really said no to that question, but I'd like to ask it. Okay, this is the last bit of like chat I'll be doing. But this is just to give also a sense of Shabaka's work, but from reading, I read a biography that Emma Warren wrote about you, and this is kind of borrowing a little bit of that, but also kind of putting in a bit of my own stuff. But this is going to be a very special session because it's the first public sharing of this particular aspect of your work, which is not, as some people might know you, as a clarinetist or as a saxophonist. Yeah? And to give kind of context, lots of people will know you as a multi-reed player, a composer and a band leader, and who's been doing bits all around the London music scene for the last like 10 to 15 years, I would say even longer. Not to give away age. And you're part of bands that we, like lots of people will have heard and love, like Sons of Kemet, Comet is Coming, Shabaka and the Ancestors. And there's a kind of great synergy. These they're very different, unique outfits and setups, but there is a kind of language that is shared between them in some ways. And you spent a lot of your life on the move and touring with these different setups and as a soloist. And so it feels like the last year and a half has been also a different kind of journey where you've been in this kind of forced pause. And yeah, so that's just the music kind of context. And then also, there's a nice phrase that Emma Warren uses about you, and she calls you a player philosopher, which I think is very accurate and very nice. You've written words for Skin Deep before, and you like regularly share posts and articles online about the intersections of your understanding of music and history and politics and culture. And you're also writing a book. Yeah.
1-2.
Yeah, that 1-2. I learned that today, so I'll tell you about it later. And yeah, so that's just to kind of give that quick context of how we've got to this point and the relationship that Skin Deep has had with Shabaka. So welcome back.
Hi. That is an epic introduction. Wow.
I can leave now. My job is done. But how are you? I guess my first question is, how are you feeling about this session now and this sharing of where you're at?
I'm really looking forward to it because I'm on a particular trajectory in terms of my musical, kind of journey. That has really started from the time of the enforced shutdown, which is learning the connection of my breath to matter, to just blowing these flutes. And I haven't been a flute player before. So it was really just a journey. Well, I wasn't a flute player, but I was interested in the breath. So for instance, me and the other guys from the Comets Come In would always do breathing exercises before playing. And that became a real kind of part of my life. I would take journeys and try to concentrate on my breath, just be aware of the breathing in and out, while in that kind of period of tour, which is quite a kind of mystical period of not a lot of sleep in any case. So I was interested in the breath, and I was interested in, how it energizes you, but it's almost like I was interested in it coming in without being that concerned on a systematic level with how it actually then goes back out. And the learning of these flutes has been, it's been a journey of actually kind of understanding how the breath doesn't just come in, if you want to just relate it to a metaphor, or you use it as a metaphor, it's not just about the kind of taking in of information or the in of the energy, it's actually how does it kind of come back out. And the thing with these flutes is it's not like instruments like the saxophone or the clarinet, where the more force you apply, the greater the volume that you get. It's more like the more focused and the more energized the stream is, the greater the level of resonance. And then that's counteracted by tension in your individual body. So it's like you've got to be really relaxed, you've got to be really focused. And just having that sphere of awareness in the exhalation, the giving out of stuff, like how do you externalize yourself? I think, the focus on that has been really transformative for me. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the kind of focus tonight and exactly what types of instruments you're going to be playing, and a little bit about them as a kind of physical object?
Yeah. It's an interesting one tonight, and I thought a lot about how I'm going to frame it because, I like that you said it's not a gig, and I can only emphasize that as highly as possible. That is not a gig. I, at the moment, go through a certain practice every day of trying, at first it was that I was jamming on the flutes, trying to figure out how you make a sound of it. And now I've got a basic awareness of how to play them. It's gone back to a kind of primordial level where I'm every day just playing these long tones on the flute. And I'm playing long tones and focusing on my breath inwards, focusing on how the very tip of the breath energizing the matter, which is the bamboo or the plastic, how my awareness of that continues throughout the flow of the breath forward. And then from that, I'll get inspired to play little things, and I'll just kind of play them. So what I was thinking tonight is I just try some of that. The problem is, all these issues to do with the flutes, they're deeply psychological issues. So it's like there are various dimensions you can play on, and each of them is valid, but all of them don't, kind of get to the deeper place. So there is a dimension of I kind of pick the flute up and I perform it, and I kind of play things that are, seen as flashy or seen as, hey, I'm a performer, that kind of thing, and that's cool, you can do that, but what I do as my personal practice is just try to focus on actually how my breath is. And it's not that I focus on it and it becomes perfect, it's not like me saying that I focus on it doesn't mean I have a perfect relationship to what's happening. It just means that I'm trying to kind of be on that journey of making the breath connect forward. So I was thinking today, I'm just going to try some of this practice here with these various flutes that I've got. That's kind of a preamble to me introducing what the flutes are. So I'll start the story. I didn't really play flute before, but I went to Japan in 2019 with the Comet Is Coming to play at the Fuji Rock Festival, which was a fantastic festival. And I went in search of this shakuhachi. It wasn't a big, it wasn't like I've always dreamed of having a shakuhachi, but I'm very interested in collecting instruments from places that I go if I come across them on tour. I think it's a good way to actually get a sense of the frequency that people have in various parts of the world, like what they're accustomed to hearing. And it's a good way of, just getting into a different mind state, picking up a little flute that I got in maybe Hungary or something that I got in Swaziland. It gives you a different kind of vibe from across different areas of the world. So I went to Japan, went to this shakuhachi shop, and it's like, can I get a shakuhachi? They were like, okay, yeah, we'll give you some plastic ones here. And I was like, look, I don't want a plastic one, I want a real shakuhachi. And they were like, look, we're not gonna sell you a shakuhachi because it's not that kind of thing. It's like, you can't just kind of play it like that. And I think they were just trying to tell me, like you need a dedication towards this instrument, and it's not the kind of thing that you get and then you realize you can't play very easily and then you put down because someone's actually worked individually to craft each one of these pieces of bamboo, and it's great bamboo, so it's like they don't want to just sell it to someone. So I basically just had to convince them that I am indeed serious about learning this instrument. And I kind of played it a bit in the shop, and I managed to make one sound, which I actually posted as an Instagram story. I was so happy with it. I was like, this was the key that allowed me to access the door of vibrational bliss in this instrument. So yeah, I kind of go, and basically, the thing that sold the woman in the shakuhachi shop, sold her into selling me, is the fact that Clive Bell is Max Hallett's dad. Max Hallett is the drummer in The Comet's Coming, and Clive Bell is one of the foremost European shakuhachi players.
Just coincidentally.
Just coincidentally, that's some crazy stuff right there. And I basically mentioned Clive Bell's name in the shop, and she was like, oh, you know Clive Bell? What a great player. And I was like, yeah, I can even get some lessons from him. And she was like, oh, okay, and then she kind of got out this shakuhachi from the back. She's like, here you go, And it was great. And, I managed to get a lesson from him when I first, got it. And in some way, it was a wasted lesson in that I wasn't in a position to be able to talk to him about what's happening, because I was just learning about how much I need to learn. I was just learning about just making a sound out of it. But it started me on the journey, basically. I was touring a lot at that point, so I thought I don't want to necessarily carry around this bamboo instrument. I want to be able to get a plastic one. So Clive put me in touch with this guy who's a master flute maker who lives in Portslade in England. And he's been making flutes for like last 30 years, but non-commercially. He makes them for himself. And he spends a lot of time and focus in crafting these acoustically amazing instruments, which no one's ever really heard because he doesn't make them commercially, he doesn't sell them. And he's not, as far as I can see, he's not really got that as a concern of his, because he is dedicated to the flute. I've started having a relationship with him, and because he can't play a lot of the flutes that he made early in his life because of medical conditions that arise from getting older, it means that he's actually passed down some of these flutes to me, including, for instance, this one, which is a bamboo shakuhachi that's coated with porcelain and tungsten carbide. I'm just gonna let you see how that sounds.
I bet no one was expecting that.
Yeah, it's a funny one, basically. This is what I just do all day these days. And it's a weird in that I find it's like the flute's got, 5 notes normally? 5 holes, but obviously within each of those holes, you've got a really kind of vast area of tonal variation that you can achieve. The flutes that this maker has made have an extra hole. And with that extra hole, essentially like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes, you can get so many melodies. I feel like if I'm playing and improvising on the clarinet or sax, with what seems like a broad range of tones, as in the 12 equal kind of splits in the octave, as the tempered scale dictates. I feel like you've got a lot of variation you can have, but at some point within the harmonic matrix, I find at least I run out of ideas, or I start to be aware of myself altering ideas in a certain way to get more variation, adding notes to this cadence, or diminishing or augmenting certain things. Whereas with this limited amount of notes that this flute has, I just find I just have more ideas, and it's like you're playing one key, you're not thinking about changing key, but you can actually change harmonic orientation. So you can change how you perceive the root, like you might perceive the root as. But if I were to then kind of focus on another set of notes and play that a lot, you'll focus on another area of the and it's like you can get all these different harmonic areas within a tonal space. And that's what just gives me loads of ideas. I just start hearing rhythms and melodies that I just know from growing up in a black environment. As in the Caribbean, I just get the sound of a lot of folk tunes that I've not learnt specifically, but I just know them. And I just find they just come out. Certain rhythms that have, that just impact you in a certain way, that can just come out if you're not thinking within the harmonic space that Western instruments leads you to thinking in.
Yeah. There's we talked a little bit about this when we were chatting before, about the shakuhachi flute comes from this tradition that wasn't originally meant as this performative instrument, but as a kind of meditative tool. Can you talk a little bit about that tradition as well, in the context of how you then are bringing your own traditions into playing this flute as well?
Yeah, it's a funny one when you're talking about meditation, because I think a lot of times when people talk about meditation in the West, there's this sense of needing to analyze it, And for me, it's like I'm not concerned with the tradition of meditation, other than that I want to clear my head of all the shit around me and just focus on the sound of the flute. that's as far as my thought of meditation goes, and that's as far as I think it should go. I want to focus on the in-breath, and I want to focus on the out-breath, and make sure my body is relaxed enough that circular motion is uninhibited by me thinking about the future or the past. And for me, that's as much as I want to know about meditation. That's what I've gotten from the small bits I've read or seen in terms of Zen. But I don't want to know too much about it, because then that's going to make me have some kind of idea of what I should be doing. As soon as you get that idea, you start to tense up, because you start to imagine that you need to change into some other form. Whereas what I do is I just go, I want to think about Zen. I don't want to know what tradition I'm coming from. What I do know that it, and this is what, the piece of information that really helped me is the fact, like you said, that it was a meditational tool before it was a performative device. So if you consider that it's, it's a tool, and that's what I think, I got from the woman when she was selling to me. It's like she's going, it's not an instrument among other instruments. It's a tool that has been made performative because it's been included into the nation's culture. And then you have songs and traditions, like ways of doing things associated with specific cultures. But outside of the culture, which is how we relate to each other as collective units, outside of that, there is the meditational space, which doesn't involve anyone else. That's the thing. It's like, it's not about culture in that way. The meditative space is about you connecting with actually the internal aspect of yourself as an individual, and then you go so far inside that you realize that actually you're not an individual, that you are connected, but on a deeper vibrational or deeper perceptive level to everyone else,
I wonder if that's, that we'll never know, I guess, but we think the thinking around jazz musicians who have come from Europe and from America, who have had this kind of longer tradition of looking towards Eastern culture, Eastern music traditions, like Alice Coltrane, and we were talking about John Coltrane as well. And I just, wanted you to talk a little bit about that kind of history, but also whether, if there are any links between that thinking and then what attracted you to this particular practice as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's good that we actually talk about this, because I've always wondered why these American jazz musicians look to the East so much and not look to Africa. Because actually, if you want to really look into breathing and the yoga and all of this, it's Kemetic. The traditions of Kemet have included those practices before they were co-opted by the East, and they were developed in a way in the East that is specific to that location, and it was codified and given a form, that it is. But actually, I'm really interested in Kemetic forms of breathing, and through the interest in that, it leads me on to looking at actually what that's reflected in cultures that are closer to us, that have more legibilized instruction, more, because obviously the cultures of the East, the Eastern relationship to breathing and meditative spaces, they've had their cultures standardized in a way that we can access. Kemet is a lot further back. You've got to look in different spaces to get the information about how sound technology and breathing technology and holistic approaches to health and life were used in the Kemetic civilization, period. I mean, it was a massive period, but.
One of the things I'm going to ask is for a first selected track that you have picked that's not one of your tracks, or it might be one of your tracks.
Oh, yeah.
So, because part of what we asked Shabaka to do is pick about 4 or 5 tracks that we wanted to give also context to this practice, but also beyond that. And so the first, I'll ask you, what's the first track that you'd like Sylvia to play? In the context of maybe these conversations.
In the context of this conversation, I think it should be the Shabaka Hutchings track, the one with the birds.
The birds, with Esperanza.
With Esperanza.
Esperanza Spalding, yeah.
Yeah. This track is made for a compilation, I probably shouldn't be playing it, but a compilation that's going to come out next year for birds, basically. It's by the kind of Society of Birds Preservation or something, and it's gotten a lot of different people from around the world, really big musicians actually, to make a song inspired by Birdsong. And it was one of these things that was in email. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll just kind of go and play with some birds, you know. So I started to just like go and listen to birds a lot more. And I realized it is literally a dimension. As in, and I remember telling you earlier, you can really equate the bird dimension to, or use the bird dimension as a metaphor for the racial dimension. In that, birds are all around us, and they're letting out these noises. They're communicating with each other. What they specifically say, we don't know because we don't speak that language. But they are letting out sounds. Now, if you start listening to the sound of the birds, even within the city, the sounds are all around, so you start hearing them, and the more you start listening for them, the more you hear them. Now, if you're not listening for the bird sounds, it doesn't mean that the bird sounds are any less present, and they're no less present within your field of auditory perception. But it's just that because your brain isn't focused on what they are, you, for all intents and purposes, don't hear them. Now, if you connect that to the race thing, if you are, you know, like racial dynamics are at play within our society, you know, if you are in a position where you understand the dimension of racial history and what racial aggression looks like in its more broad and its more small forms, if you're in a position to understand that dimension, you see it all around you. If you're not within that kind of dimension of thought, then it's invisible to you, even though the same manifestations or the same actions will be happening around you. You can just not see them in the same way that you can be around all of this bird song within a city and just not hear it unless you're actually listening out for it. So back to the tune that I'm going to play. So I started listening to these birds, getting into just trying to hear birds, like take my headphones off for, you know, every once in a while and just listen to actually what's happening. Normally I wouldn't do that because I just don't want to hear what everyone's got to say out in the public, and the sound on the street is so loud in London that I'm just like, I'd rather have my headphones on even if there's nothing on. But actually now I've started to take them off when it's a bit quiet and just listen out for the birds. So listening to birds, I kind of go back to another email. I kind of missed the deadline, and I see the people that have already contributed to this thing. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a serious thing. I didn't actually read that part of the email. So I was like, okay, it's going to have to be a bit more than me just playing along to some birds in the park. I need to actually kind of make something. So I decided to actually just like say, okay, I've got no time to play around. I'm just going to do a ritual of practicing all day on this instrument, and then just like going into the park at 3 in the morning, setting up my recording stuff, and just improvising with the birds for a couple of hours until people start, you know, emerging. So I did that practice all night, went into the park, 3:30 in the morning, set up my stuff, recorded, and took the sound, put it into, well, I say put it into Ableton, but I've been meaning to learn this production technology for ages, and I just never got around to it. And this project made me just actually go, I need to prepare something, and I don't even have the time to collaborate with anybody. So I just, you know, did it. Basically layering up the sounds, mixing the, you know, getting the actual sound to be how I want it. And actually from there, I've actually done quite a few bits more of production. I'm getting into that headspace to actually making music, as opposed to just recording a part of it, or getting people to follow commands, actually being able to piece it together.
So we're going to listen to, Sylvia, when you're ready, some of this clip. We're going to listen to the whole thing, actually.
Yeah, why not? 2
Say
minutes
again?
or?
Oh, you need 2 minutes. We're all good, guys.
definitely listening to it in this room is making me think of different ways I could have mixed that tune, but it's another conversation.
Every day's a school day.
Every day is a school day, exactly.
I guess as part of that, listening to it in a different space is also to do with the type of space that you're listening in. The fact that we're listening to that in essentially a glass house as well will change the experience of it, and also will change the experience of how we're hearing any of the instruments you're playing live tonight. And I wanted to, I guess, ask about that term resonance, because it's come up already, and I think it's a big part of why you've chosen to play these instruments and how you've chosen to play them completely unamplified as well. So everything you're hearing is just the pure sound that is coming naturally from the instrument. Yeah.
I was thinking, I told you this before, I was thinking earlier today as I was coming here, it's really weird that it's more acceptable for a band to turn up in a space and play a lot louder than is necessary. It's not seen as anything. It's like people get it all the time. Like, we get a band, and I am one of the chief exponents of that. I'll put my hand up and say guilty as charged. I've turned up in that space and I've assaulted my audience with a lot of sound because we can. I've got my earplugs in, and it feels good, and everyone has a great time, and it's euphoric. But it's seen as strange and unusual to come to a venue and play so quietly that people have to listen in, and it's like everyone can hear in, this way, and I can hear that way, and if I can hear the sound of what I'm playing reverberating in the space, then it means everyone else can, and we have the same experience. I guess the underlying logic in wanting to amplify everything is the logic of it unifies the experience, in that the people at the back can hear as well as the people in the front. But the people in the front with the speakers are still going to be getting more sound than the people in the back. It's just that they're going to be in the kind of tragic end of that experience,
I guess there's like resonance on different levels. So there's the physical resonance of the sound in the space, and then there's the emotional resonance that you have with an instrument as the player, but also as the listener. And so I think there's also some question around how the way that the sound or the instrument resonates with you as a performer allows you to access kind of different dimensions that you may be not accessing when you're playing the saxophone or the clarinet.
Yeah. There's different angles to this. Well, a thing that I learned a number of years ago is that in the musical traditions of Swaziland, which include bow, so you've got, it's mainly played by women, you have a bow, like a hunting and arrow bow, like this, and on the middle of the bow, drawing it together, is a kind of metallic string, and they've got the kind of part of the bow in their mouth, and the other part has a calabash by their breast, and they kind of twang and kind of hit the bow. Now with this music, the audience has an experience of what's being created externally, but because the instrument is actually connected to the performer's mouth, and they're kind of resonating the string, and that's making the calabash resonant, it means that the person's body is becoming a resonant vessel, and what they experience is within a different dimension to the performer, to the the listener, who just receives these vibrations or vibrational frequencies after they've left the performer's body. And it's interesting with these instruments here because it's a very similar mechanism in that when you play them, there is an experience that's happening to your body that's just not going to be the same with the audience. I've forgotten your original question now.
I mean, you said you were going to take it down different paths, so that is definitely one of the paths. It was just also about does this particular kind of instrument and the different way you're playing it, the different way people are experiencing it, does it give you access to kind of different feelings yourself as the performer as well?
Definitely, because they're instruments that respond really badly to tension. So if you tense, or if in the process of mentally engaging with ideas that don't have anything to do with just the process of inhaling and exhaling. If you're thinking about other stuff, then the instruments will show it in actually what's coming out the other end in a way that's more apparent and naked than it is on the saxophone and the clarinet, where you've got a reed that's focusing, that's like acting as the middleman between yourself and the breath. So it means that actually you've got to clear your head. You know, you've got to be relaxed. The way that I've played my instrument in terms of the clarinet or the saxophone, I've always been aware of tension, and I try to, it's like a balancing line that I've got with tension. It's like I'm trying to get as intense as possible while trying to remain not tense on a bodily level, just when I'm normally performing with like Sons of Kemet or Comets Coming. It's that real fine line, because you can get intense to the point where you lose consciousness of the fact that you've got to keep your shit together. And if you lose consciousness of that, you'll just get into the zone so much that actually your body starts doing things that aren't good for it, and that actually prevent you from accessing the dimension of that intensity that you could if you were just in control of what's happening in terms of your body. And by that control, I just mean having an awareness of when tension starts to take you away from the flow, and when it starts to just be a bit self-serving. So in playing these instruments where you can't get tense in that way, I think it's made my awareness of the sources of tension and then the sources of relaxation in my playing the kind of Western instruments, the clarinet, the saxophone. And what that means in a practical sense is that when I'm playing these gigs over the summer with Sons of Kemet and the Comets Coming, I'm finishing playing and I'm like, that was a breeze. It really doesn't feel that difficult anymore because I'm not getting tense when I get intense. You know, I'm not going, and expending energy like that. It's more like trying, you know, I'm not doing it perfectly, but I'm at least aware of the fact more that I'm supposed to be actually inhaling deeply at the end of every phrase. And to inhale as deeply as possible, you've got to relax. And to relax, you've got to not be thinking about anything other than the moment at hand, like actually what you're doing in that very present moment.
Which is kind of not necessarily expected, that an instrument that is not connected in any way to the saxophone or the clarinet, and it's not a reed instrument, it comes from a completely different history, has had such a big and like physical and positive impact on the performances you're doing with Sons of Kemet, Comets Coming, Shabaka and the Ancestors, etc.
Yeah, and I think if you conceptualize it as a tool as opposed to an instrument, it makes sense. Yeah. In that, you know, for one, it actually works the muscles in your mouth a lot more than the saxophone or the clarinet, because, you know, I'm not, you know, it might be that people, like, you know, you, the listener, or the audience, or participants, you don't appreciate what's happening here, but these indeed are not recorders. They are shakuhachis and plastic instruments that are based off the system of breath as the shakuhachi. And what that means is that it's about actually kind of having the mouth muscles in a position where you're not actually moving them, you know. So it's not that about getting tense and pinning your muscles back, but having the muscular strength to actually be able to relax, you know, relax to the point where the muscles do their job automatically. You don't have to do anything. So what that means is that when I'm playing these over the days, my muscles are actually getting worked to the point where when I play the saxophone or clarinet, I'm warmed up, which is fantastic. It's good to have a way of keeping my kind of chops for playing in gear that's not playing them. You know, I've always had a thing about playing loudly. Like, I've not been the player that's in the house practicing like real loud all the time. And in the start of the pandemic, one of my big artistic aims, well, I say artistic, but my big aims was to try to play as quiet as possible, just because I was like, we're going to be here for a long time, and I've got neighbors, and I am aware of the noise going outwards. So then it's a thing that I've been thinking about for a long time, like really, really long, about how quiet you can play while still maintaining the same technical procedure, you know. So normally you think of playing loud and you think you go through a process of breathing in, kind of getting the support, you blow out. And if you get quieter and quieter and quieter as you play, then there'll come a point normally that you just do a different thing to achieve the sound. So I was trying in the pandemic, trying to play as quietly as possible while still breathing in enough, while still having my mouth in the right, position. And it got to the point where I could practice, for the Copeland Concerto that I did last November in the Barbican. It's just that's a whole other story of how I prepared for that. But I was able to practice just like throughout the night because I could get the very smallest sound on the clarinet and just play the whole thing. And it connects to the shakuhachi, which is trying to actually be in tune to the moment where the breath creates the first resonance on the instrument and just being aware of that kind of source of contact throughout the duration of your breath. So then it doesn't matter if the sound is big or small. It's about actually, is the breath continuous throughout the process of it, traveling through the instrument. And that's, I guess, was the process that was started in preparing this clarinet piece. Because I was playing this piece so quietly, it's like I could play all the cadenza, but without, I could play at 2 a.m, knowing that I've played with the right technique and I'm blowing air through the instrument, but the sound that was coming out was so quiet. It was incredible. And these instruments are, it's a thing,
Should we have another?
Yes, have another go. So
are you going to try a different
I'll try a different
shakuhachi?
one. I'll play this one, which is the original shakuhachi, and I'd actually thought I wasn't going to play this because this is an actual shakuhachi, and it's I do feel some reverence to the fact that I am a beginner in this instrument, but I just love playing it so much. Every day I just kind of play these long tones on it. And the thing that I love about this instrument is that it is humbling. It's not like you practice a certain amount of times and then you achieve a level and you stay there. It's like you kind of come to it and you're like, how is it going to be now? This is going to be a journey of being able to play you. So I can't make any promises, and I don't mean that in a kind of I'm going to say this and then I'm going to play amazingly. It's going to be a process, and just bear with me. It'll come at some point. And if it doesn't, then, you've been entertained in another way. The one thing is, though, you've got to be very quiet because I can actually hear the sound of talking in the back of the room. And this is a very kind of mental thing, just kind of getting into it, so just so you know.
going to ask a couple more questions, and then we're going to have a bit more of recorded music, and then we're going to have a little break. Cool. You've kind of touched on this about it being an instrument that has, in a lot of ways, humbled you. Because, well, there's a constant kind of conversation and relationship that you seem to be having with it. But it must be a strange place to be, having, like, especially in your career, got to a point where you're a teacher and mentor for a lot of other musicians. But then also now being in a place where you're experiencing learning something from scratch. And can you talk about that kind of humbling and learning from that place experience?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's an interesting thing in that I've been learning, in addition to Ableton, I've been learning the MPC, and that's been the thing I've been learning throughout the whole lockdown. Now I'm at a position where I understand it, and I can go in, I can kind of do the thing of making music with that box. And that's a piece of Japanese technology, as well as this piece of Japanese technology. It was an interesting thing in the whole lockdown period of just getting this Japanese vibe, Akai and the shakuhachi, the two extremes. But I say humbling and we use these words, but actually it's terrifying, because I can say it's like I don't want it to be like, to seem like I'm this guy that just plays these instruments really well. It's like I got up this morning and just went and played for a couple of hours because I was like, I can't guarantee I can play these instruments. I can't kind of get up there and just be like, I'm going to play the shakuhachi and let you know what I've done. It's a process, and like when I'm at home playing it, it's for a different purpose. And I would like to think that I can, or one would like to think that the performer gets in front of the audience and is able to just switch off and give a rendition of their artistic landscape. But in reality, there's always that awareness from this side of actually the fact that what you're doing is being received, and it kind of gets doubled by the whole streaming aspect and the whole archiving for the future world to comment on. There's all of these kind of factors, which means that it takes me / the performer away from a space of actually being able to concentrate, to concentrate in a way that's unheeded by these considerations. It's a thing of me being aware of it, as opposed to just having it be a force that imposes itself on you subconsciously. Because if you're aware that it would happen, it means that, I get over there with this shakuhachi and I'll be like, you know what? I don't actually care. I'll be like, I've told everyone what the deal is, and I'm going to play this, and if I don't do a reflection of what I do when I'm by myself, then at least I've done some breathing, And for me, that's the kind of healthiest way of approaching it, because the learning of any instrument well, I say terrifying. That was kind of a dramatic in fact, but it's a thing of, you've got to be audacious. You've got to actually just jump in and just do it. And if you like something, just kind of keep doing that, because tradition is cool after you've gotten to a certain level. And I think that some people just get too caught up in having to do things as they've been done before at a certain stage. And there's a certain stage of learning something from scratch where you've got to basically just experiment all the time. And then through that experimentation, find a language that can connect you to what people have done before. And that's how I think I've developed my jazz journey, for instance.
Which is interesting, and we've talked about this before, about how the kind of traditional jazz composition, there's a lot of improvisation, but it's within a kind of formula of progression.
Yeah.
Whereas this allows for a kind of more, it's partly about a kind of the process of it is the practice, and also that there's a circularity to the practice, that you're not trying to kind of go through a formula to reach a goal. And you described it as you have a kind of introductory part of a jazz piece, then you have the melody come in, then a room for improvisation, etc. Whereas this, it feels, like a much more kind of cyclical way of playing.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's good. I've been listening.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But also, as part of that, it's kind of what I would imagine, I don't know if this is the right phrase, but a musician's instrument, in that it's not kind of, it's an antithesis to a lot of what we are familiar with in contemporary music making, which is a kind of performative and commodified performance of an instrument.
Yeah, and it needs to be, because actually if your instrument isn't made a commodity, then how are you going to live? And this is what needs to, like for me, it's like when you realize that actually there is commodifying of music, because we are within the space that we're in within a capitalist structure. So if the music isn't commodified, then you're going to have to do something else. And if you don't have the privilege of maybe having roots to other stuff, then you're going to have to compromise. So actually dealing with that, how you're going to commodify, and making sure that there is an integrity to it, or there is a line of thought. It's not happening on a level that's sub with the consciousness. That's the balancing line. And I guess the thing with melody and specific rhythm and harmony is that there is a commodification aspect and an objectification aspect to it. But, it's all a matter of perception. It's like sometimes you can fool people into thinking they hear stuff that they don't hear. Like sometimes you can fool people into thinking they hear a melody when actually you're playing free jazz. When actually you're playing something that's gestural, and you kind of plant the shadow of the melody in the audience's mind. And that might be the thing that gets you going without being explicit. And I find that some actually, like the great drummer Tony Marsh told me about this. The late great drummer Tony Marsh. He was like, you want to basically be as kind of fun, within a free improv setting. He was a great free improv drummer. And yeah, he would basically say you've got to think in terms of funk and groove, and think in terms of really the soul of it. But when you play, you just play a kind of fractured version of that. You don't play everything. You play you keep that groove inside, and you're basically painting with the corners of that groove. Like imagine you've got the groove and it's in you, but then you blow a whole set of smoke inside your mind, so you only get and then shine a light into it. So you only get glimmers of this kind of groove that's happening, but it's just kind of coming through in various points. And as you're kind of perceiving these glimpses of groove, you're just playing them in a free jazz or freely improvised, I shouldn't say free jazz, but freely improvised context.
Can I request another track?
Yeah.
From you? As in, well, you as in you.
What I think we should play.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is going to be the last one up until the. You've got the tracks there. Remind me what they are. I've got the orchestral thing.
We've got orchestral. We've got Black.
Black, yeah.
We've got Sitting on a Satellite.
Sitting on a Satellite would make sense now, because I talked about the MPC. Yeah, so this track, then this is one of the next things that I kind of produced. Soccer 96, who are the other two guys in The Comet Is Coming, the original band that I saw that made me want to jam with them, and that jam would become, the forming of the group The Comet Is Coming. So their group, Soccer 96, has a new album that I think has just been released, which is really good, amazing. And they asked me to do a remix. So with all the learning of this production technology, I was like, I'll do it. And I can't emphasize highly enough the fact that I couldn't do any of this stuff before the lockdown. As in like I didn't even own a mic. I think I owned one SM58 microphone, and that was it. I could play things in GarageBand or cut the ends off tracks just if I need to send a playlist. But I didn't know nothing. And it's just been a whole process of waking up in the morning and putting on YouTube and watching tutorials every single day, And I just there's literally stuff for everything. YouTube is amazing. It's you can go on and be like, what is compression? I know this word exists and I don't know anything about it. Someone tell me what it is for dummies. And there'll just be a dude that goes, sit down, little homie. I've got you. This is compression. You're gonna know after this 5 minutes, and I watch it, With Ableton, I was like, I just want one of these videos that's 2 hours, and I watched the whole thing and I just know it. So then I found a good kind of straightforward, straight talking guide to just, for 2 hours on this video, show me what Ableton is. And what my whole thing is I'll watch the video for the time in one go, and then I'll go back and watch it again while just doing my own stuff in relation, so like stopping every 2 minutes, doing the thing that he's saying on with my own music. And then by the end of that time, you basically know the program, you know. So then this was, and that's what I've been doing for the MPC. With this, do the remix. So what they did is they sent me the stems, the individual parts, and I just kind of cut them up, put them into the MPC, and then just played them in various places, different from what they had originally, and then added my own beats to it. And yeah, I'm very happy with the result.
Sylvia, you ready?
Black would like to make a statement. Black is tired.
Sylvia.
Black's eyes are vacant. Black's arms are leaden. Black's tongue cannot taste shit. Black's stomach.
The track that's sitting on a satellite, the King Shabaka remix with The Comet Is Coming.
Best bit. But it's good because it means that you can actually go and listen to the rest, because the tune dramatically changes from that exact point. So it's actually the perfect point to stop it. But yeah, mark my words, it does improve. It kind of changes for the better.
What we'll do is we'll play it when we go into the break, and we'll play it all the way through during, so people can stay and hang around and also listen to it.
If you want, but I trust that if it's tickled your fancy, then you'll go and you'll go and check it out. You see what the deal is. But it does even have a flute solo.
No,
yeah.
we will have to play it in the break.
Yeah.
We'll play it in the break. Okay, we are going to have a little break so people can get a drink and take in what they've heard so far. But I don't think anyone necessarily expected this kind of session. Hopefully everyone is enjoying it and you're enjoying it, because it is the first kind of sharing of its kind.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, it's great.
I've just never seen someone so excited, which is really joyful.
It is really exciting. It's like, like I can talk about it, in kind of verbal terms, but actually the feeling of playing these instruments, in terms of internally, it's very pleasurable. I got to say, it's like, it's just that feeling of resonance within your actual like head cavity. It's a great, outside of whether it sounds any good. It's just like when you do get that, that resonance, it's just a real good feeling. It's like, yeah, I'm just like, so I get really excited about the flutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also am curious to know, which we can ask people in the break, their experience of it. I'll come around and chat to people, but also I wonder what the live stream audience is also hearing, because that will be a completely different experience too. So we'll ask for little bits of feedback as well.
Also, I'll just say, because I just remembered, I'm sure I won't, but I went on a tour of this museum's instrument collection.
Yeah, you did.
And it's amazing if you want to see, obviously there's questions about, the holding of artifacts in spaces that means that you can't access them. But regardless of these questions, I'm just like, I'm actually seeing this thing, and it's great to just look at, So for me, there's a dimension of consideration of those facts, but the thing is actually just to see these instruments, it was, I enjoyed it. And they have a shakuhachi.
From 1906, or before 1906 from Japan.
Before 1906, and it's just like, there you are. I can look at you and imagine. And actually, that's for me the important thing with all of these kind of spaces is the stimulation of the imagination. That if you look at certain things, even if they are not in their like rightful spaces, they're gonna give you something. And for me, that thing is a spark to think about something that wouldn't have been thought about necessarily in the same way if you hadn't have seen it, because to visually picture something, that especially something African that symbolizes something else, to actually look at it and kind of cast the focus, the orientation of your focus towards that object, you're still going to get something, in terms of on an internal level, if you let your imagination travel with the focus that you're, giving it. All right.
Break time, everyone. We'll have about 10 minutes, and then come back, and we're going to be joined by another instrumentalist as well. So it'll be another set of sounds that we're going to be listening to. But we'll see you in 10 minutes.
what I say. I can't go on living life this way. I've tried and I've tried to make you see. You call this love, all this lying, my friend, it just having you near. But who am I fooling when I know it's not real? I can't hide all this hurt and pain inside I feel. At last I am free. I can hardly see in front of me. I can hardly see in front of me. At last I am free. I can hardly see in front of me. I can hardly see in front of me. At last I am free. I can hardly see in front of me. I can hardly see in front of me.
Hello. Guys, we practiced this earlier. Hello. Much better. Welcome back to the second half of this very special Sonic Transmissions. I said earlier, my name's Adem. I'm the music curator here at the Horniman Museum, and it's my pleasure and honor to be sharing this space with you in person or online. It's been really special so far, right? Yes. Oh, that was like yes, spiritual yes. I just wanted to say that I spoke earlier about how special tonight is, and it's the last show of our 696 festival, and how honoured I feel personally to be sharing this with everyone who's here tonight. I have to thank our funders for making it possible. That's who have enabled the live stream to be free and the tickets to be pay what you can. So big thank you to Arts Council England, to Cocaine, to the Museum Association and Esme Fairburn, and the London Community Foundation for supporting us and making this happen. So with that, I'm going to hand back over to Anu and Shabaka Hutchings.
Also, I appreciate everyone is chillier than maybe they expected to be. So I appreciate you pushing through the cold to stay and be close to people if you can. But welcome back to this second half. It's slightly different in this second half in that we have a little bit less time, but also the funnest part for me is that I get to come out to you guys, and you can ask also any questions, because there's plenty of things I've been interested in and have thought about leading up to this, and there's also going to be plenty things that I have missed. So start thinking and marinating on the questions that you also want to ask Shabaka. But we're also going to hear a kind of conversation between different instruments as well in this part. And so maybe you can, well, I'm going to ask the question and then you can decide whether you want to play in response to this first or respond yourself first. Which is, we talked about kind of resonance and the music, this instrument being a kind of musician's instrument, and the experience of playing it as an individual, an experience of playing it in your own spaces, and then in a space like this as being distinct experiences. But what happens and what changes for you when this instrument and all the history that we've got in, as context now, is played with another performer or another instrument?
Well, it changes, basically. It's like I'm trying to make it more similar to what I experienced when playing by myself, but when you play with other people, you get into a zone of communication that is, it kind of pulls you from yourself into another zone. It's like, and that's what I like about it. It's you can have your thing that you do, you got your way of making music, and then you get that plus something else, and it becomes, a dialogue sounds a bit cliched, but it becomes more like, it becomes more psychological, because other forces are at play in terms of what decisions you make, like in terms of who leads, I guess in the same as like dancing, in terms of, just how you manage the dynamic balances at play,
Should we start with a piece?
Let's start with it.
Yeah?
Let's bring
Okay,
up
I'm going to lead.
Crispin Robinson.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to swap places.
So one of the plastic flutes now, and it's a very interesting thing with plastic, because we associate plastic with disposable stuff. You see an instrument like this, and I indeed did also, and you associate it with something that is like a child's toy and disposable, but this is a serious instrument, basically. And it's like, this is going to be around a lot longer than any of these kind of bamboo flutes, so like you got to just learn to love it, because this is what I want when the kind of societal Armageddon collapse comes. I want a plastic instrument.
That was a completely different experience to like the two pieces that you played in the first half.
It's shocking. And actually, like when I first started to play coming out of lockdown, those first performances with people, especially with the flute, it was a really like discombobulating experience, you know, that only I would be able to appreciate, you know, the level of the discombobulation. To everyone else, it just sounds like a dude playing flute. To me, it's just like, wow, I'm being so discombobulated right now. It's amazing.
It's not the same level of discombobulation, but I think there is a kind of, especially anyone who's seen you perform or heard Sons of Kemet or Comet is Coming and that kind of experience, because it is an experience, to hear this in comparison to that is a kind of, it is again like the dimension conversation we've had, like it is tapping into different dimensions, but also like this attraction to like softness and subtlety that is, I wouldn't say it doesn't come through in Sons of Kemet, it's just completely different.
Yeah, I think it makes me think a lot about the essence of stuff or the elements of musicality that are the most potent. Because I think that the flute brings out the most potent or the most essential elements of my playing in any of the groups. You know, it's like the core, like, you know, like, and alongside the potent bits is all the other extraneous bits of musical stuff and composition and stylistic kind of things. But at its core is actually what happens when you've got 5 notes and a bunch of vibe and all the textures that surround the possibilities which, you know, are infused within these, you know, kind of sound choices.
This is out of my kind of realm of understanding or comfort zone, but I was thinking about it in relation to like the blue notes in jazz, these kind of like in-between spaces. But it feels like, and that could be completely wrong, but it feels like with this, there's the in-between spaces are huge in terms of like what you can play and the playfulness that comes in the in-between.
The playfulness, the sound of the breath also, the sound, it's not like, or at least from my training within the Western system in that, you know, I did a degree in classical clarinet, so I kind of know what the ideal is with the Western instrument system. And it's about trying to get a purity of note. It's like you're trying to get the note as has been defined by the tradition of the last 100 or so years. And it might have certain variations in relation to the clarinet, in terms of the French school of manifesting the sound, or the American system of manifesting the sound. But essentially, it's trying to go towards one reality of possibility in terms of what the tonal manifestation of this instrument is supposed to be. The clarinet sounds like this, smang. And if you don't do this, then either the establishment kind of allows you, or it says you are wrong, you are some kind of degenerate, or you are a jazzer. And that's the kind of what they kind of call it, you know, in terms of in the institution. You know, they allow jazz to have this exoticism of being what they think is wrong, but they allow because they think that those people do wrong stuff all the time, so we'll just let them do their stuff, you know. How do I get to this now? It's just quite a tangent.
Have you played yet with other shakuhachi players?
No.
Flute players? Is that part of the plan? Or?
I don't know. I think I'm definitely not there yet. You know, Max said, you know, keeps on saying, oh, you need to play with my dad, you need to play with me. But I feel like, you know, I'm satisfied with my development in that I am understanding what the deal is, at least. You know, like what's at play here in terms of what's being done on an internal level. But I think the point where I'm actually comfortable to then engage with other people that have spent just a longer time on this process than I have, I think I'll get to a point where that is an obvious, you know, there's an obvious answer. But at the moment, it's not that obvious, so I'm not going to rush it.
We've talked a lot about kind of this journey that you've been on to this point, and this being the first sharing. But simultaneous to you going on this practice journey and practice, you've also been composing at the same time in a very different way, but also linked. So I wanted you to talk about the kind of your current work, and with this context.
With this context, yeah.
And also, we can play some of those tracks, but I also wanted to play one of the recorded tracks you've chosen that has influenced the composition as well.
Yeah.
So that we'll do that.
So at the moment, I'm finishing a composition for the London Sinfonietta that will be performed in the London Jazz Festival.
When's it going to be performed?
It's in like November the something, I can't remember.
I think it's the 17th or the 21st, don't quote me.
Something
but
like
you can
that.
Google it.
You can Google it.
Yeah.
It's around basically. 4 of us have been asked to compose a piece, and I'm one of the people. And basically, this thing has taken over my life right now. And I've been through very many stages with it. I went through the stage of going, yeah, and they offered it to me within the lockdown, and I was like, yeah, I'll write a piece. It's great. Opportunities come up. But then as life has kind of regained its kind of momentum, and I've just got a clearer idea of what I want to do on an artistic level, I started to really resent having to focus on my energy on this European establishment because they've paid me money to do it and I've signed a contract saying I should do it. I just felt like I'm wasting my time doing this thing because they're not giving enough rehearsal anyway to realize a piece that I'm going to write more than just being able to read the notes on the paper. So then you just get this thing of just going, why am I even composing this thing for them when I could just be writing stuff for myself? And I was really at an impasse, and I broke through the impasse by actually saying how I'm going to write for them is to do my method of composing my own stuff, and I'll just then transcribe that for them. And what I mean by that is normally in terms of my production stuff, or what I've been doing recently as a practice, is getting a loop station, the Boss RC505, which has 5 strips, 5 channels that you can record onto. So what I would do is just kind of start off with an improvised idea on one channel, then just think of something that goes with it on the next one, think of something that goes with it until you've got 5, and then add, you know, if I've got a busy day, I just leave it there, not even listen to it, just save it. Next day I'd copy that onto another program of channels, and then just delete one of them, listen to it for the first time, and just respond instantly to what I did the day before, and then continue the process for the next 5 channels. So I've got another strip that's the same tempo and the same vibe as what I did the day before, and I'll just do that for I'll do that for like a week or something, or a couple of weeks, until I've got a bunch of musical information that's all related on a thematic and a tempo level. Then I put it all into Ableton and then compose it and make it into a tune. So I basically did that process for the orchestral tune, made a tune on Ableton, and then started the process of transcribing that into the Sibelius music notation software program, which allowed me to write musical notes for the orchestra to read. And that's where I'm at right now. I've just finished this composition, and I was able to do it because I knew that I wasn't writing it for them. I'm writing it for myself to have production material. And I really like it. You know, I'm just at the point where I'm kind of adding dynamics and articulation, and it's like every day I just get up and I work on this piece. Just like work from morning to evening, have little breaks to play the shakuhachi. But it's been, yeah, and it's like I'm not a composer. I've composed a bit before. I've composed like for an orchestra, for the BBC Concert Orchestra. I've done like a string quartet and some brass ensemble pieces. But the way that I compose is kind of in this way. It's like I don't operate on a theoretical level. I just see what works well and what works well under that, and then what works well with that. And then I just add layers, and then I do a lot of editing to see how much I can take away, what needs to be added, where density points need to be throughout the scope of a composition. So yeah, we can. So
we're gonna, Sylvia, if you can get that loaded up. But can you explain like what exactly we're gonna be hearing on this recording as well? So this recording is just, I mean, I shouldn't even be playing this because it's not even been, you know, performed yet or rehearsed yet. But this is my world right now. This is all I'm listening to, which is MIDI, MIDI is like computer language. It's computer representations of these orchestral instruments. And I'm just, yeah, writing them in, and it's like how to make a symbol that those players can read and interpret as musical sound. So yeah, this is my auditory world right now, the sound of these computer instruments reflecting what I'm gonna have these orchestral musicians play. So yeah, you can be a part of that. Yeah, you can play. And up a little bit, please, Sylvia.
Yeah, and that basically, that goes on for like 15 minutes, just like stuff like that.
Can you just describe the instruments that you have, that you could hear the sounds of, or the sound?
Oh, yeah.
What
So it's going to be string quartet. So you got cello, viola, 2 violins, brass. So you got 2 trumpets, trombone, and then 2 flutes, 2 clarinets, and percussion. There was the option of harp, but I was like, the harp is an elitist instrument in that only a few people can afford to actually come into contact with one. So I don't want to write for it, because it just means that it limits the people that are going to be able to play this piece. The piece I wrote without myself or any other kind of jazz players in it, because I would like other people to play it outside of these people that have commissioned me. So I wrote the percussion for woodblock and cowbell. So you got 3 woodblocks for 1 person in cowbell. And what you hear is just the combination of them playing together, but it's all kind of scored out. And my kind of dream would be for, like, you know, some kind of school band to just kind of play. So it's got these instruments that are about, basically.
I'll pay to go see the school kids recording of it as well.
It'll be a tough one, but I think it is possible. And if you actually break down you can't really hear it from this, you know, representation of it, but if you break down the music that's within it, it's stuff that, you know, just as a person that understands black culture, you'd get it if you break it down into its smallest denominations. They know out there phrases. It's all phrases that connect to the black vernacular, you know, when you break through the levels of complexity, especially rhythmically, which leads us on to the next thing that we're going to play. Because all I listen to at the moment, outside of my own, you know, computer sounds, is drill music, because I just think it's the best. Like, really, it's like Ambush Buswell, Back Row G, Abracadabra, all those guys, Unknown T. It's like, I don't want to analyze it in terms of, because I think you can just analyze the joy out of it, but I just listen to this music because it's what I want to hear. You know, it's just like what I want to hear today. Obviously, I want to hear Commander and Steve by Back Row G, because it's just the best tune.
Sylvia, can you load that one up as well?
Yeah.
But also, because we were talking about it before, about how, because it's the thing that you're listening to outside of the stuff that you're, outside of the flute, is that you can hear a lot of the rhythms and tones in the composition that you've made.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of when you listen to what's happening on the production level in this music, you know, what I really love about just this music as a general form, there's a kind of high-pitched percussion dimension that I think has been missing from this kind of black British music. It's been around in the broken beat, but that kind of someone actually improvising a complex pattern in that high frequency. It connects it to a lot of West African traditions also. But that's what I really love in this music, and I think I've taken some elements of that, not in terms of pastiching the musical information itself, but the vibe of the kind of cowbell and woodblock from just that sonic, area in this music.
Sylvia, you ready? We'll play a bit of this one.
King break it to life with the flesh
turn
to
it
the
up a little
bed.
bit.
Say with your chest so we spray the woof, 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 woof. Every blood clot where. Grab your split knees, grab your girl, grab your urdu woof woof. And get ready for what's to come. I've got a live show for you, you know. You're not ready.
To the world, we're to move that straight to the pavement. Back up, you don't wanna end up mooked to reach your base like how about mooked. PYH, protect your edge, forget your chest. My Jedi, my what, my killing my dog, my family. K Dizzy would do it for me, wallahi, I'll do it for him. Meds are late, his price is
Can you go up a bit more, Sylvia?
Stood up and left, now we lost the compass. Hunting, fill it with lead or copper. How about mooked, we did that proper. 2 strikers, no assist. Through skirt, do it like this. Cuff you, I can never take the risk. Look it up, I've been taking a piss. Like it was, don't make me stiff. If you're bad, then take off your wig. Take off your wig. Take off your wig. Take off your wig. Come on, there, Steve, with my blessed clients, gonna make me thousands of pounds. When I we put them on, it says, oh lovely, give me now. Shabba smokes too much crack, he should have lost his arms. But instead he lost his legs. On the TV I thought he was dead.
Hey, gangster, gangster, I beg you respect my gangster. Gangster, gangster, I beg you respect my. Bing a di learn ting, bing a di learn ting. Beno di learn things, beno di learn things. Hey, Gangster, gangster, I beg you respect my gangster. Gangster, gangster, I beg you respect my. Bring out the leg ting, bring out the leg ting. Ban out the nonsense, ban out the nonsense.
Thank
Bring
you
it to
so
life in the
much.
fresh element, say with just always spraying the word, the move everywhere, everyone.
Plot twist. That was a real plot twist.
Plot twist, isn't it? Yeah. Or not.
Or not. Yeah.
Or not. Actually, I would actually argue that it's not a plot twist at all. It's a logical theme and development.
It's exactly how it's meant to be. Exactly how it's meant to be. I am gonna, just because we've only got a little bit of time left.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come out to you guys for some questions. We've got time for literally like one special question, maybe two.
How much time do we have?
We've only got 10 minutes left.
10 minutes. Are we going to play?
And then you're going to play at the end.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we'll have one more together.
Yeah.
Yeah? Does anyone have a question? Oh, Courtney, hey.
Hey, thanks so much for this. This is amazing. Just want to say I've been following some of your videos. We've been doing the flute, and in terms of the theme of kind of space, what are you looking for in the places where you choose to play the flute? They're kind of out and about in the world. Where are the spaces you're going to?
That's a great question, actually. A couple of different things. One is I'm not like anti people being around listening to me, but I kind of like to be in spaces where it's not a thing, where it's not like, oh, here's a guy. And I mean, the flute helps in that because it's inconspicuous. If a guy whips out a plastic flute, no one's just going to think he's just some dude. I've got one here that looks just like a crack pipe, you know. So that kind of helps blend in some areas. You just kind of like, you know, but, you know, so it helps. And, you know, you've got ones like this that actually look like a kid's toy. So people like, he can't be serious. He's just playing this little rectangular kid's toy, but it is not a kid's toy. It's a meditational device, actually. But the other place I look for is just resonant spaces that sound good. So I was in the museum just now, and I just went to the bottom left and I played, and it was amazing. I really need to ask someone if I can do that again, because I was just like, this is a really amazing space to play, you know, and it's just kind of sitting unused for a lot of time. And someone like me, the way that these flutes should be played is that you practice them in dry conditions and then you perform them in resonant spaces. But it's really difficult to find resonant spaces outside of concert halls. So whenever I come across a resonant space on tour or on the road or somewhere, I'll just do a little kind of video. Or I'll be in a space and I'll have been practicing to a point where I just think I'll just put my phone down and just kind of press record, just so I can have some kind of document of what I'm experiencing. Yeah, it's a fine line between getting out, documenting it, and getting out of the zone to set up a theatre of a performance. And that's a thing as well, because I kind of like having a well-framed archive on the internet, but then it's like sometimes the spaces are so nice you don't want to break out of character to set up that device. So then, you know, and then sometimes I'm just really happy with my playing and I just want to record wherever. So yeah, it just depends basically. But whenever I get that feeling of I want to record here and I feel like, you know, it's a good spot, I'll just kind of press record.
Thanks very much.
And there's one more question that we're allowed to do before we have one last track, is from the live stream, someone who's watching at home.
And I'll just say, Shabaka, you can come and play here whenever you like.
Fantastic.
So this is from my dad, who wants to know, he said, given your current journey with the flute, are there any flautists who are inspiring or challenging you in your development and your practice?
I mean, at the moment, the more I learn actually about Clive Bell, the more I realize that it is actually incredible that we've crossed paths in that I play with his son, because he is actually a master shakuhachi player. That's one of those kind of very, very strange coincidences, you know. Yeah, so I've been listening to a bit of Clive Bell, and actually just today, Max put on social media that he's been making an album with his dad, and he just released the first single. So you should all go and check that out. It's on the Betamax, I think, versus Clive Bell. Yeah, other than that, in terms of, I don't really listen to that much shakuhachi plays, because when I'm playing it, it's just a personal relation between myself and the airflow. But I've got some recordings, like Clive gave me a really great recording that I listen to all the time, but I can't remember who it is. I just like the sound of it. In terms of flute players in general that I like, Magic Malik is obviously, he was my go-to guy for a long time. Max Silla from Martinique, I've been into a lot as well. We've got the jazz players, Eric Dolphy. I love, he's got a flute solo on the album Last Date, on You Don't Know What Love Is, and I think that's one of the greatest flute solos out there in jazz. So that's, the flute for me.
Shout out to Max's dad,
Yeah.
and dads generally. So we've got time for one last track, so I'm going to switch places again and take my water bottle with me. But just before, I don't think anyone necessarily expected this journey, but I think we're all here for it. So thank you, and we'll do a little kind of shout outs at the very end. But it has been one hell of a night, and thank you very, very much, Shabaka. Here's one last track or tune.
So, whichever you feel, maybe the woodblock thing.
Thank you. This is the last of the 4 sonic transmissions that we've done over the summer, and it's a very special one to end on. There's a couple of thank yous that I want to give for all the work that has gone on behind the scenes leading up to this point, particularly to the Skin Deep team, who are phenomenal. Toby, Nat, Sylvia, and Alicia, who have all been working in different ways to make these happen. So can I just, everyone give a big hearted round of applause to all of them. Thank you. And also to 3 different teams who have all been working kind of separately but also very in sync and in tune with each other, which is Infinity, who have been working on all the tech for all the events, Method Films, who have been live streaming everything, filming, recording it, giving us an archive for everything, and to the Horniman team, who has facilitated this and hosted us and let us take over for 4 months, and hopefully will have us back, and we'll have you back definitely. So thank you to all of those different teams as well. And then a special thank you to all of the people who tuned in from home, and then most especially you guys, who some of you have come back from different sessions. Some of you, this is your first one. Hopefully you'll come back for more as well. They are different. It's a whole different kind of listening. But I think particularly with this one, it has made us tune in to a different dimension of listening that I don't think necessarily a lot of us had access to or would have thought we had access to. I was chatting to Seth in the break, and he was saying that when you've had your ear tuned in to the flute and to you, every other sound becomes loud, properly loud. You hear the plane going above, and it's it's in the room. So thank you for taking us into a different dimension of listening to what we've done before in the sonic transmission sessions, and to what we get to do generally in our lives when we are overwhelmed with sound a lot of the time. So you've given us a very specific way of listening. So thank you, Shabaka.
Thank you for being a great interviewer and asking so many questions, and it's been good preparing, because Anu always prepares very well. So we always have kind of preliminary chats where we actually, get to process stuff and know know the areas we're going to actually explore. So, the ideas have a chance to germinate and form. So, thank you.
I mean, when you're having a conversation with someone like you, have to do your homework. I'll take that for free. But thank you, Shabaka, for having the session with us. And hopefully more to come in the future. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Just going to say thanks to Crispin on the percussion also. Let's not forget.